Hi, welcome back to my channel. For those who don't know me, my name is Katharine, and in today's video, we're taking a trip to Barnes & Noble. You can actually see Barnes & Noble right behind me. I'm in the parking lot right now in my car, clearly, as you can tell, but I kind of have a love-hate relationship with Barnes & Noble. I do appreciate their selection and accessibility. I feel like no matter where you go, especially in the United States, you can almost find a Barnes & Noble in a general vicinity. So I do appreciate that it's so accessible, and when you do go into Barnes & Noble, there is a large selection. But my thing is I'm making like a major shift from reading like mainstream popular fiction books that are secular and going more towards Christian fiction. They do have a religious section in Barnes & Noble, which I do appreciate as well, on top of it being accessible and having a large selection in general in the store, because sometimes even like local bookstores don't even have like a religious section. So I do appreciate that they even have a religious section, but typically that religious section mostly includes things like Bibles and not just Christian or Catholic things. It also includes things like Jewish stuff and Muslim stuff. So it's just like a general religious section. And when it comes down to like the Christian fiction section of that religious section, it typically is a small selection of Christian fiction within that. So I don't know if I'll find anything in the Christian fiction section today within that religious section of Barnes & Noble. So we'll see. I'm not like totally against reading secular books. I am actually right now making my way through the Harry Potter series, which is obviously a secular book. I have read the Twilight series before, which is obviously a secular series as well. I have read secular books in the past, and I'm not going to stop reading them. It's just for the most part I'm stopping reading them unless I know that they're clean and don't have any spice in it, which is another term for sexual content, and if I know that there's no like underlying or blatant demonic stuff in it. So we'll see what we get in there. My top priority is the Christian fiction section, because I have unhauled a lot of books that I just don't plan on reading, and I want to fill up my bookshelves that are looking very empty and sad right now with Christian fiction books that I would actually read. But if I do find like a secular book that has been cleared in my definition of clean and not demonic and stuff like that, then I'll buy a secular book. So we'll check the other stuff in the general fiction section and stuff like that, not just like the religious Christian fiction section. But we'll see what I find today. I'm definitely buying something because I do actually have a $25 gift card to Barnes & Noble. So I'm definitely buying at least like one or two books, depending on how much the books are in here. And that's another thing about Barnes & Noble that I'm not like a huge fan of, is their books are like very expensive. I know that like local bookstores have to kind of hike up their book prices to kind of make a profit and make up for like it not being a big box store and it for not being so popular, if that makes sense. Whereas like Barnes & Noble is a big box store and it's also super popular. So like why do they need to raise their prices up the way that they do? Like a singular like hardcover book is easily $25 or $30. I've sometimes even seen some of their like special edition books that they do like be like $40 or $50, and I just am baffled by the price hikes in Barnes & Noble. So we'll see what I get. I'm definitely getting a book because of the gift card that I have, but we'll see on how many books I'm getting, depending on, of course, like the book's prices in there that I'm interested in. So let's head inside. Enough talking from me. I tend to ramble, so I apologize, but let's just head in. See, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to like the Christian fiction section. I'm in like the religious section of Barnes & Noble, and like from this little banister or like section separator over to the end of the aisle or the bookshelf is like where the Christian fiction is. It's like just like this like one little section right here. So what am I gonna do? It's okay. I'm gonna just look over here and see what I can find. At least there is like a Christian fiction section. So I'm excited. So I am clearly back in my car, and I got 2 books today that I'm going to be showing you. I had that $25 gift card for Barnes & Noble, so I used that, and both of these books, I believe, were, one was $16.99 and one was $15.99. So after tax, came out to be about $35. So I only had to pay like $10 of my own money for these 2 books. So I'm gonna just describe what I got in there. They're both Christian fiction books. I have not heard of these books before, and the back of the books where the synopsis is was what really intrigued me to these books. I'm trying to be better about that, like not buying books or reading books in general that are just popular. I don't want to read a book just because it's popular, if that makes sense. Like I want to read because I genuinely want to just read a book because it's something that would interest me. So I'm trying to be better about just reading books that I'm interested in rather than just reading it because it's popular. So I have heard of this one author called Tracie Peterson. So that's why I had picked up this book in Barnes & Noble, but I didn't know if I was gonna buy it until I read the back of it on where the synopsis is. So let me just read the synopsis for you because I'm really horrible about describing books before I've read them. I know it's a historical romance, a Christian historical romance, I should say. But apart from that, I really don't know how to describe it. I just know that when I read the back of this book, where the synopsis is, I knew that I had to read it. So it says, Cameron Coulter's brother Caleb is a successful San Francisco attorney. But when 3 months go by without a word from the usually communicative Caleb, Camry boards a train to the booming West Coast city to find out for herself why he hasn't written. When she arrives at his home, nobody seems to know where he is or what has become of him. Camry's search for her brother leads her deep into the political corruption of the city and into the acquaintance of Patrick Murdoch, who Caleb successfully defended from a false murder charge. Getting to know this handsome Irish contractor challenges all of Camry's privileged beliefs, but Patrick is unshakably loyal to her brother, and he seems to know more about what happened to Caleb than anyone else. As the two edge closer to the truth behind Caleb's disappearance, they risk angering the powerful forces that control the city. Can Camry trust Patrick to protect her from the dangers that lie hidden in San Francisco's back streets? So that sounds really interesting to me. I'm a big Christian historical romance reader, and it seems like it could have a romance between Camry, the main female character, and Patrick, who's the main character. And it essentially sounds like it has, a mystery going on in there, and possibly some suspense, because there's a lot of political intrigue and dangerous situations that they may need to encounter in order to find Camry's brother. So it definitely sounds like something that I would be interested in. I am really interested in this specifically because I have been taking a turn of not really reading a lot of thrillers, but hopefully this would give me some sort of taste of a mystery suspense that I could possibly rather than something that's a thriller, which is more dark and sinister. Not that all thrillers are dark and sinister, but they're more jumpy to me rather than this that is more just trying to find out where her brother is, and it's not really scary by any means, if that makes sense. And then the second book that I got was Tamera Alexander. Unlike Tracie Peterson, who I have heard about, I have not heard about Tamera Alexander. At least in the few short months that I've been watching Christian booktubers and bookstagrammers and book talkers, I have not heard of this Christian fiction author before. My thing is once I read a book with a certain author, for some reason I see that author popping up everywhere. That's what happened to when I read Where the Lost Wander by Amy Harmon, and that was a 6-star read for me. And when I read that book, I'd never heard of Amy Harmon before, and then as soon as I finished reading that book, I see Amy Harmon's name everywhere. So maybe that'll happen with this book, where even though I haven't heard of Tamera Alexander before, maybe once I read this, I'll start seeing her. That's not just with authors, but that's with a lot of things. If I experience something, then I see that thing pop up in other areas of my life. For example, even my car, I have a Dodge Nitro, and I swear to you, I never noticed Dodge Nitros on the road before I had a Dodge Nitro. I just didn't pay attention to that. Maybe it's I think it's, there's a certain term for it, but I can't remember what the term is for that specific instance, where it's you experience one thing and then it just comes up more in your life. But anyways, on to this book. So it's by Tamera Alexandra. It's called With This Pledge. Of course, it's another Christian fiction historical romance. And this takes place during the Civil War. And it says, Elizabeth Lizzie Clouston quietly held principles oppose... Let me start over, okay? Because I'm having a difficult time reading this. Like I said, have a hard time describing books without having read them before. So let me try to read this back of the book, the synopsis again for you, because I'm like getting really tongue-tied. So it says, okay, let's get this off on the right foot, Katharine, okay? It says, Elizabeth Lizzie Clouston's quietly held principles opposed those of the Southern cause. But when 40,000 soldiers converged on the fields of Franklin, Tennessee, the war demands an answer. The Carton's home, where she is governess, is converted into a Confederate field hospital, and Lizzie is called upon to assist the military doctor with surgeries that determine life or death. Faced with the unimaginable, she must summon fortitude even as she fears for the life of Townie, her fiancé and lifelong friend. As a young soldier lies dying in Lizzie's arms, she vows to relay his final words to his mother, but she knows little more than the boy's first name. That same night, decorated Mississippi sharpshooter Captain Roland Ward Jones extracts a different promise from Lizzie, that she intervenes should the surgeon decide to amputate his leg. Lizzie is nothing if not a woman of her word, earning the soldiers' respect as she tends to the wounded within Carton's walls. None is more admiring than Captain Jones, who doesn't realize she is pledged to another. But as Lizzie's heart softens towards the Confederate captain, she discovers that his moral ground is at odds with her own. Now torn between love, principles, and promises made, she struggles to be true to her heart while standing for what she knows is right, no matter the cost. From the pages of history and the personal accounts of those who endured the Battle of Franklin, Tamera Alexander weaves the real-life love letters between Captain Roland Ward Jones and Miss Elizabeth Clouston into a story of unlikely romance first kindled amid the shadows of war. Okay, that's interesting. I honestly didn't read that far in the synopsis, obviously, to find out that this was based on, like, a true story. So that's kind of cool. It's based on an actual girl named Elizabeth Clouston and a captain named Roland Ward Jones. And they were basically on the opposite sides of, like, believing in the Confederate Army or, like, the North. So that's really cool. I honestly am really excited to read both of these books. They're both historical Christian fiction books. And I don't know if the first book I described, In Hidden Places, has romance in it. I'm assuming so because it has a main female character and a main male character, and they're like working together. So I'm assuming they have a bit of a romance. But the second book that I described with this pledge definitely has a romance in it. So I'm excited to read both of those. I think I mentioned before that my favorite genre is Christian fiction, historical romance. So I'm really excited to read both of those. But yeah, thank you for following along today's adventure. I know I rant and ramble, and also reading those synopsises are very difficult for me, but I'm trying to get better for you guys. I swear, like, when I'm reading in my head, it goes a lot more smoothly, but like, excuse me, but when I read out, when I read out loud is what I'm trying to say, it's a lot more difficult for me to translate the words from my head out of my mouth. And for those who don't know, I grew up with an IEP, which stands for an Individualized Education Plan. And I've always kind of struggled with reading, even though I've always enjoyed reading. So please bear with me. Even though I'm 28 years old, I still struggle with reading out loud, or just reading in general. Like I tend to be a slower reader. But I'm excited to read both of these books. If you've read these books before, please let me know what you think of them, obviously without any spoilers. But yeah, thank you again for following along today's adventure. Please do all the YouTube things that you know how to do. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!